Hello. So, today I'm actually re-recording, but I will be talking about a pretty important topic. Um, for many of us, if not every one of us, have played a match or a scrim or what have you, where you end up losing. And one of the big things that your team talks about in how to improve in the next time or what went wrong or what have you was the fact that you had a number of opportunities to push into their last with ad, and none of them, or very few of them, converted into rounds. In principle, a full ad Uber into last should just be around every time. Of course, that's not how it actually works, but it should at least be a high enough percentage chance to win a round that you should be pretty comfortable with that kind of situation and pretty comfortable scoring rounds off of it. So, what makes last pushes so difficult for different teams? Well, we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about or elaborate what I mean by a last push here, because there are, a multitude of different ways that you can push last, whether that be off of picks, whether that just be maybe slim ad that ends up evening, but it was slim or enough ad that you got space through the doorway and then you just take a dry fight from there, etc. All types of different scenarios that you can see into last for a push. I'm talking strictly about ad pushes, Uber ad pushes, assuming pretty much everyone's alive on both teams. And let's say, around 50-ish ad, more or less. Just very straightforward. Probably the most common type of push you'll see everyone alive. One team has Uber, the other team doesn't, and the other team's not close enough to getting anytime soon. So, with that in mind, let me talk about what an Uber into last wants to get. So an Uber into last wants to get kills, of course. You want to be able to get kills so that you have player ad for a post fight. And just quick, when I talk about a post in any context, I'm talking about basically what comes after something. So in the case of an Uber push into last, when I talk about the post, I'm talking about that post Uber fight, because stuff still continues after the Uber, of course. So yeah, you want to get kills with the Uber so that you have player ad for the post. And you would want to get cap pressure as well, because during that Uber, a lot of the time their combo is kiting. And on many maps, including Sultry, they're going to be hiding in spawn. Or rotating through spawn, and during that time you definitely want to get cap pressure, right? On most maps you want to cross to the other side with your Uber. You can end your Uber anywhere you want. The places you should end your Uber is on either the side you used in on or the opposite side, right? You want to cross with your Uber if you can, because that basically like sweeps more space with your Uber than it otherwise would have. And yeah, you get more space. It's easier for your flank members to get in or whoever else to get in. And it's easier to get kills as well, because then you get to pinch like flank members that were holding the opposite door, things like that. So Ubers want to cross. And if you can, you want to just win the round during that Uber, right? Get the kills, get the cap, cross, all that happening at once, and then the round is just over by the time they can even leave spawn. That's what an Uber wants. Now, not every Uber is going to get that, and most of the time, you're only ever getting, one of those things. If that, a lot of the time, you're not getting any of them. So what I think is more important here is to talk about what an Uber needs, not what it wants. And what an Uber needs is, first and foremost, a good post positioning. So I alluded to that a little bit when I talk about you can end on one side or the other, or should end on one side or the other. You really don't want to take an Uber where you do all the things that Uber does, you decide to cross, Your Uber ends here. They're leaving spawn. Suddenly you're just stuck here. You have to try and back up now, but someone's coming out of this spawn and killing you all. If you had just stayed here, then you're totally happy because those guys don't really threaten you. You can still hold down this shutter, not let anyone through that, and take your post fight here. So this is an example of a good post positioning. If you have the time as well to fully cross and be standing here, then this is also a good post Uber positioning. But something like this is pretty bad. Something like here is pretty bad. And this happens a lot. This is like one of the main things that goes wrong. You'll see this in particular on maps like Gullywash or Snakewater, where teams will just like to end their Uber kind of central low ground because it feels like they can fight the point. It feels like they can fight either spawn if they want. It feels like you're not letting them get any space, but because you're taking such poor positioning on low ground, where you can get shot from a lot of different angles at once, you're actually giving them a little bit of everything. So picking a side and having a good post Uber positioning is very important. That's what an Uber needs for the post to be fightable. That's pretty straightforward, right? As long as you're not just getting hard denied by a pyro, as long as like their gun goes down and isn't like shooting you while the Uber is ending, as long as like very basic things get taken care of, then you're at least guaranteed a post Uber positioning on the side you used in on, and that's good enough. That's what an Uber needs at the very least. Another thing an Uber needs, or rather the other thing the Uber needs, is to take out the sentry. 99% of the time, the sentry needs to go down. There should be a sentry as well. If there's not a sentry, then that's just better for reasons we'll elaborate on later. But yeah, the sentry pretty much always needs to go down. You could make some argument on some certain setups that it could be worth foregoing taking out the sentry. For example, on Metalworks Last, I'm not going to switch to the map here. On Metalworks Last, you have the bridge going to the point. Let's imagine this is the bridge. And of course, you can be underneath the bridge. There's a little walkway going down to the point. And sometimes people will tuck a sentry underneath that, right? It like kind of watches the point, but it really just watches the right side and doesn't let the flank in. A lot of the time, as a demo, I don't really prioritize that sentry. A lot of the time I don't see it, but I don't prioritize it that much because you can just get so much space in the front. That's a sentry that can probably go down in the post rather than during the Uber. So there are some guns and some situations where you can get so much value outside of killing the sentry gun that it's worth waiting to take it out until the post because there's just more important things to do during the Uber. But for most Ubers, and I mean most Ubers, you're going to need to take out the sentry gun. But that's really the only two things that you need, absolutely. You can absolutely be perfectly happy with taking an Uber in that gets no kills and only gets the sentry gun and ends on the side it used in on. That's a perfectly playable situation, and in some cases even just an advantageous one for you, that you should be more than comfortable playing with that full ad. But yeah, let's talk about last pushes in terms of stages, because last pushes you can think about in terms of stages. There are different stages to last pushes with Uber, and different things happen in those different stages, because the number one way that Ubers go poorly is in part because of like poor post Uber positioning, ending in a bad spot, but more importantly is not pacing things correctly or doing things out of sync at the weird time. And poor Uber positioning is kind of a result of that, where you don't think about how much time you have or don't think about what your pace might be and end up out of Uber in a bad spot. But yeah, the stages. Number one stage, this is where you're bombing in and trying to catch players. So on Sultry here, if you were to use through top right, as a demo, my primary goal with this bomb is going to be looking if any players are going to be caught. So if their med is like here, they might just be caught to that bomb I just did. And I'm going to be shooting them off shutter, getting damage on them, killing them. Really, any kill is really, really nice to have. Scouts are nice, engineers are nice, demos, of course, are great, medics, of course, are great, but any kill at all is very nice, and that's what you're looking for. So first and foremost, you're going to look to catch players in this first stage, and this stage will end when you either A, catch the players that you can catch, or B, try to and fail, and they get out into spawn or whatever, or C, there's just no one caught, in which case you can immediately go to the next stage. And this next stage is to kill the sentry gun. Very straightforward. You want to do that early, usually, and a lot of the time the combo is going to be kind of close to the gun. Now, I don't want to say these two are interchangeable, but on certain holds, if the combo is on one side and the sentry gun is on the other side of last, teams will often go for the gun first with their bomb and just assume the other team isn't caught. One example I can think of here is Process, where the combo will like to be on top left of heaven, and oftentimes they'll build a gun in front of right shutter, and teams will prefer to use through 2 and immediately take out that gun. But in cases like Process there, you just take out the gun and then you get to like rebomb right after, because it's usually fast enough. Yeah, most of the time the gun is kind of close to the combo and not on the opposite side, so you don't have to worry about that. And the times that you might want to take out the gun first as well is when the gun is the reason people aren't caught. So if the gun's going to juggle you, or the gun is just in too annoying of a position to be able to catch anyone, then in cases like that, you can consider no one caught and just move on to the next stage, which is take out that sentry gun. This is 100% up to your demo. They should be able to just take out the gun with ease. Well, I guess there's a couple things I can talk about here. First and foremost, it is important to get in the habit of bursting down the sentry guns rather than try and just single det them. So if we imagine there's a gun in front of the shutter, which is a weird spot for a gun on sultry, it's usually going to be like here, but let's imagine it's there. If I just try and single det it, and the engineer is committed to tanking this, then it is possible for them to out-heal my damage, versus if I instead just did 2 stickies in a pipe, or on lock and load, you can actually just do 1 sticky and 1 pipe. At the same time, then it's just going to go down instantly. And yeah, against engineers that try to tank their guns, you definitely want to be in the habit of bursting them down. You're going to shoot the same amount of projectiles anyway, so you may as well just do that. That's going to be better, more effective. And in some cases, you might just kill the engineer as well. Yeah, and also they can run gun pyro, which I think I should elaborate on later. Let me add this in of how to deal with things. So on gun pyro can be difficult, but arcing sticky's higher, so that, well, arcing sticky's high and low at the same time, and the pyro can really only reflect one of those. A gun is gonna take longer to go down if it's a gun pyro setup, but as long as you're not just like AFK, just trying to single det, or just spam it directly, same as you would anyway, then and actually like mix up where your stickies are coming from, things like that, it's not usually as bad to deal with. The gun should still go down, and of course, again, that really just falls on your demo's shoulders. Okay, moving on to the next stage. And this is where you guys are actually tasked with a decision. I suppose whether someone's caught or not is a bit of a decision, but this is a more consequential decision. And that is deciding what side to end on. So, if... let me move this section over here. So, deciding what side to end on. As I mentioned earlier, your post Uber positioning is very important, and you want to end on a side. You don't really want to end in no man's land. That's very central. Even though a lot of the time it feels okay, just end on a side, and things will be clearer when I talk about the later stages. But you need to pick a side to end on, and this entirely comes down to how fast or slow you did the first two stages, right? How quickly you were able to catch players, attempt to catch players, or decide no one was caught. How quickly it took you to take out the sentry gun will decide whether you want to cross with your Uber or stay. And whether you can cross or stay, 100% just comes down to, do you have enough Uber to end in a good post Uber position on the other side as your Uber's getting like running out, right? That's really all it comes down to. So on the different maps, it might be different margins that you can get away with. On like a very wide open last, it's going to be much more difficult to cross than on a smaller last. But that's what you're looking for, right? Of course, crossing is better, but it's more important to end on a side that makes more sense, right? So if you don't have a lot of Uber remaining, let's say maybe let's say everyone was caught and like you kill a demo and a scout, and then focus the gun, take out the gun. In a case like this, you're almost guaranteed like you just don't have enough Uber to cross, and that's totally fine. That's better than trying to cross and then potentially giving them picks, giving them the chance to actually hold, considering they're down a demo and down a scout. So deciding what side to end on is very important. And yeah, it's an important decision to make. One that takes some experience, some like actual thought about, should we have crossed there? Should we have stayed? Stuff like that to actually learn from and get better at. But let's move on to stage 4 here, which is very important. This is a stage a lot of teams don't even think about, don't even think is real, and something that even like invite teams will just mess up on. And that is stage 4, rehealing and reloading. During an ad push into last, a lot of the time you will want to do everything at once, right? You want to do all those things the Uber wants that I talked about earlier. You want to be killing people. You want to take out the gun. You want to be pressuring cap. You want to be crossing. You want to be doing all these things. You're not going to get all that with every Uber. And once you decide where you're going to be ending your Uber, once you're on that side, once that positioning is established, right? So let's say you cross and there's some random guy caught, then sure, you have to take care of that first. But once you've established that positioning on the side, you need to chill out, take time to reload. By this point, your demo should have almost nothing loaded, because if we imagine like a right side Uber, you use usually like one sticky to bomb in, maybe multiple, let's say 3 stickies to try and catch players. You use 2 stickies in a pipe on the gun, and then after that, you use another few stickies to lock out the spawn if you're staying, right? If you're crossing, they're going to be using stickies to try and hit people, and then potentially even reload a couple and lock out the spawn you ended on, right? Your demo's not going to have anything loaded. Your players might be a little bit weak, because let's say your scout gets unflashed for a moment and eats some damage from the sentry gun. They're like, 90 HP, a little bit unhealthy for a scout, right? Any number of things can happen during this. Taking that time to actually reload, actually get healthy, and actually like stage the positioning for a commit later is really important and cannot be understated. This is something that just should be happening. And yeah, actually, that's like the big thing that goes wrong a lot of the time is when I talk about that pacing, something that goes foregone way too often is just chilling out, being happy that you have good positioning, that you took out the gun, and that everyone is healthy in a good position to fight, and then going from there, right? So taking the time to reload, taking the time to reheal is very, very important in a last push. You don't want to rush things too much. You, of course, while the Uber is ticking, have a timer for how long you can do things. But once the Uber ends, assuming their med's not like anywhere close getting, which most of the time they won't be, then you totally have as much time as you need. And yeah, you should enjoy that. Okay, and then the final stage is the commit. Regardless of what side you end on, you want to commit across to the opposite side because that's the side their team is going to be at. So if you ended right side, you want to commit across left. And if you ended left side, you're going to want to commit across right. This is basically just where everyone who is now healthy and reloaded can aggress. Your soldiers can bomb targets. Your demo can walk forward. This is a good stage for scouts to pressure cap as well, which I can talk a little bit after this about what different classes do in the different stages. But yeah, this is where you know, if they have the heavy because the NG died and switched to heavy, you focus that guy down at this point. Just try and go for kills, try and go for the cap, just try and go for space. Essentially just commit across, nuke them, and win the round. And you're happy. But that commit is only as good as the stages leading up to it. Of course, everyone needs to be healthy, everyone needs to be reloaded, and everyone needs to be in good positioning for that commit. That's really what's winning the round here. Everything before that could, at any point, go really well. You could just kill their demo in the first stage, bombing in, and then suddenly the point is free and start capping the point. And draw their soldiers in, flash their soldiers to kill, or flash your scout to kill the soldiers, stuff like that, and just win the round, you know, in that first stage. Any number of these stages could go very well for you and increase your chances of winning the round. But assuming everything's kind of normal, nothing like crazy happens, then this fifth stage, the commit, is actually what's winning you the round. The Uber and all the stages leading up to it were just, you know, setting the stage. I think now would actually be a good time to talk about what different classes might do in the different stages. In particular, with regards to cap time. So, as far as cap time goes, you can get cap time early as a pocket scout. You know, let's actually talk about what the disad hold is going to look like for the other team to understand what's at play right now. So they're going to have a sentry gun. Their combo is going to be ready to kite into spawn. And they're going to have traps on point. And they're going to have soldiers holding doorways, ready to jump away. Stay healthy, because their health is going to be really important for what I talk about in a moment here. So soldiers are holding close on the door to guarantee a force and jump away and survive. And during the time that, well, during the last push in general, but especially during the time when the combo is in spawn, for as far as the point is concerned, the first line of defense is, of course, the traps that are on the point. And that usually deters a scout from just standing on it and getting a ton of cap time for free before the soldiers can react. And for some points, or like some, you know, setup, it might be easy to pressure the point. You can just like shoot a stick on the corner and then corner cap it. But the sticks are the first line of defense. The main line of defense for a last hold, as far as the point pressure is concerned, are your soldiers. Your soldiers are going to try to be staying healthy and available to bomb the point. There are going to be a lot of last holds that fall apart because both soldiers get resupplies at the same time and no one can stop point, and then it just gets capped. So soldiers coordinating with each other and making sure only one goes at a time, bombing the point, just trying to basically trade out with the guy capping, because that bomb is probably just a one-way trip. Yeah, just trying to trade out with that guy, trying to stall the cap as long as possible, because the longer that fight goes, in theory, the better it is for the defending team, because they have access to off classes, they have access to the resupply, so they're just trying to stall, basically, to hold. That is their main strategy. They're not trying to get super aggressive and kill you all. They really just want to hold on, wait things out, because also, if there's spawners for both teams, The spawners on the defending team are already basically in the fight, whereas the spawners on the attacking team are quite far away. So the longer that fight goes on, it should benefit the defenders. So the soldiers are really just trying to stall the cap as long as possible, cycle their bombs so that they have as many bombs available as possible to stop the cap time. Okay, with that in mind, a pocket scout can totally still pressure the point, but know that you're going to be drawing in a soldier bomb and are going to need to be reflashed, most likely. That is something you have to be very aware of, is the traps on point and the soldier bomb trying to stop you. But you can totally try to pressure the point either while your demo's trying... Well, actually, no. You can totally participate in trying to catch people as a pocket scout. I probably should. That is worth doing. But you don't really do much against a sentry gun, and... honestly, like, some scouts do take out guns and shoot at them. I prefer my scouts not to, just because I know I'm going to lock down that gun for... Well, I didn't mean to make a pun there, but I will literally lock down a gun. But I will take out a gun with near certainty. So I don't need my scout wasting any ammo or wasting any time on that. So while I'm taking out a gun, a scout could totally be pressuring cap. And... yeah, for really any other stage, like, cap pressure could be powerful when you're committing a cross. It depends on if the traps get clear, I suppose, but point pressure can happen really at any point. The main time it happens, of course, is during the commit, because that's when you're actually aggressing into them. That's when you're going to want to get that point pressure, draw them into the point so that all your spam classes can just nuke them, things like that. But cap pressure can happen kind of whenever, as long as you're aware of the threat of the bomb, of the threat of the traps, things like that, and not dying to it. Then a little bit of cap pressure here and there definitely increases your odds of winning. As far as what a medic does, very, very, very straightforward. You just heal your players and cross to whatever side they want to cross to, or stay on whatever side they want to stay on to. This is, of course, assuming all your combo members are on the same page here, which we will talk about with communication. One thing I do want to point out, though, is flashes. So when you Uber onto a player, if you are beaming someone and you Uber, that Uber lasts 8 seconds. Any time you move that beam onto someone, including that same player, if the beam gets broken somehow, that decreases the remaining amount of Uber by half a second. So if you Uber in on, let's say, your demo, and you flash your scout to catch up to your demo, and then you reflash your demo, you're already looking at 2 flashes, because you flash your scout once to catch up to the demo and reflash the demo. So you're already 1 second down. If you just keep flashing back and forth each player, that Uber is going to run out very quickly, and it's going to be much more difficult for you to be able to cross. And you really want to make sure that you're only doing that if that means they're going to be avoiding a ton of damage and just killing a bunch of things with that, right? It's usually best to avoid flashing people unless they're about to take a ton of damage, because it's worth flashing someone just to avoid the damage rather than keep them from dying outright. But if you can afford to avoid flashes, then your Uber will last longer, and it's more likely that you can get away with a cross. So keep that in mind. Just know how the flashes work, and, you know, use your brain about how to use them, because it can be a minor optimization. But yeah, as far as positioning and all that goes, very straightforward. You just basically play with your demo and your combo. As far as demo is concerned, I've been doing most of this from a demo perspective, just as a demo player. Very combo-oriented type of thing. But yeah, you bomb in, you're the main guy trying to catch players, you're the main guy taking out the gun. And on a cross, there's only so much you can do. On a cross like Sultry, actually, this could be a nice doorway to sink sticks across during the cross. Same applies to like a Sunshine, where both spawns are kind of like across a flat wall. You can just walk down and sink to the other side. So that can be nice. And then definitely, you need to focus on reloading during that reload phase. You need to have some ammo ready for the commit because you are going to be the primary damage dealer during a commit. You're pretty much going to be the difference between whether a heavy lives or dies. So staying healthy and staying reloaded for that commit is very important. Yeah. And actually, one thing I failed to mention about Pocket Scout is you totally can shoot soldiers. And it can be quite good too. So this would be during like the catch players phase. If a soldier is like close in the doorway trying to get the force, hitting that guy for even like 80 damage is absolutely worth it. I would only caution against just chasing that pick too far because you definitely still want to be ending your Uber with your combo. That's very important. But any damage on any soldiers is going to be very nice because that means that their efforts to stop the cap are going to be much worse. So damage on the soldiers during that initial catch players phase, or even when your demo's taking out the sentry, just early into the Uber can be very potent. Okay, now let's talk about Pocket Soldier. So Pocket Soldier is not going to be directly involved in the Uber. A lot of the time you can trail the Uber. Your door selection is kind of going to be up to you. I would recommend not going in with the flank, though. Probably want to be more combo oriented. So honestly, just trailing the Uber can be good in a lot of situations. But all you really need to do is just establish, well, first and foremost, just stay healthy for the post because there isn't going to be much you can do until the post. And then just be healthy for the post, have a good positioning for the post, and then just play for the commit because you're going to be the primary aggression there in that soldier bomb across. So just staying healthy, usually just trailing the Uber is fine. And if you can, just, get any pick, maybe, you get shoved and can get a kill there. Stuff like that is fantastic. But largely you are just playing for that post while your combo does the combo things. As far as flank goes, you are going to be on the opposite side that your combo uses in on. And again, you are primarily playing for the post. So you just want to stay healthy. You don't want to get in too early and get focused down. But where you get in does depend on not only what you want to do, but what is being communicated. So if your combo is ending on the side they used in on, so let's say the combo ends right side, then as a flank, you could totally just wait for the reheal, wait for the commit, and then get in to pinch during the commit. And you could totally just rotate right-sided and just get in immediately because your team has control of right side, and then potentially even catch a buff, something like that, but be available for the recommit across so that it's a commit across with 6 players from one side rather than a little bit of a pinch. Can be up to you how you want to play that, and of course different maps have different benefits or drawbacks to that effect. Of course, if your combo is crossing, then that's a good indication for when you should get in because the players that are holding the door that you're trying to get in are going to be getting pinched and might just be picks. So that's a good time to get in as the flank. But yeah, that's the main. And of course, the roamer will be bombing during the commit, etc. Flank scout, big on cap time. That's like a big, like pocket scout can get early cap time. Later on, flank scout loves to cap. So something to look for there. And another thing as well for soldiers, and this could be a big pocket soldier thing as well, is clearing the point of traps. Of course, a demo can clear the point of traps, but usually during the Uber, just they're doing so many things that they don't have time to clear the point. So a soldier that doesn't really do as much during the Uber, if they can afford to peek and clear the point, then that's very important and makes cap pressure a lot easier for your scouts. And yeah, of course, not every point you can just clear the traps with a rocket, but for most of them you can, and that's a good thing to do if you can get away with it. Of course, every last plays out a little differently, but that's what all the classes generally like to do in a last push. Okay, let us now talk about You know, I am going to move this section later. I was going to talk about this now, but I think it's going to be after this. So, maybe even do it after this. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Let's talk about communication and comms. So, things you need to communicate. And communication is very important during Ubers because, of course, the flank and the pocket soldier might not necessarily know what's going on with the Uber and might not know how to play around it, versus if they know exactly what the Uber is doing and what is going on, then they can play to the best of their capabilities by being able to fully understand the situation. So things that get communicated or should get communicated, essentially every Uber. First and foremost, as a demo, if I'm bombing in and someone is caught, I'm going to be communicating mostly to my pocket scout who is caught, and if need be, where. Most of the time, just who. Take them out. If there's a weird gun spot, then by all means, you can communicate to your demo where that gun is so they can go kill it. A lot of that will come down to spotting, which we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, what's caught is going to be communicated. And really important, basically any Uber I ever am involved in as a demo, I am going to call exactly where that Uber is ending. And last pushes are no different. And not only calling where the Uber is ending, but calling where you want the Uber to be ending. So as a combo, this is when you figure out whether you want to cross or stay by communicating that to each other, right? So if I take out the gun pretty quickly and I'm as the demo calling across, then by all means we should be crossing. Usually it's easier for a medic scout combo to cross than a demo, because demo is just slower and demo might not even have ammo at that point to really defend themselves. So whether you cross or not will in many cases come down to the demo, whether he's fast enough to. But at the very least, if the demo can cross, the combo can cross. From there you can figure it out. One thing about the cross, actually, I should have mentioned for the what a demo does section, is you can totally justify your demo staying on the side and just holding down shutter while your combo crosses, gets the flank in, and then suddenly they're like locked out of both sides. That's totally solid. Of course, your demo is alone at this point, so runs the risk of getting bombed by one of the wayward soldiers that are kind of lurking around. So there is some vulnerability associated, but if you want to play an Uber like that, you totally can, or you can just cross your demo. It's up to you. But yeah, every Uber you should be calling whether you want to cross or stay, and then when the Uber ends, you want to be calling what side you're ending on. Some teams will call their flank in specifically and say when their flank should get in. Most of the teams I've been on have not done that, because in my opinion, as long as your combos calls and Uber calls are good enough and give enough information, that's everything your flank needs to know to get in. But that's going to be up to team preference. Some flanks might prefer to get called in. Some combos might prefer to call their flanks in. So it really is up to you. Not super necessary, but you might prefer that for your pushes. And then last thing that should absolutely be getting called is when to commit and, important targets during a commit. So if I'm ending right-sided, no picks or anything, a heavy's coming out of left spawn, I'm reloading. This is the reload and reheal stage. I don't necessarily need to get to full ammo. But let's say I'm calling during this, of course, I need to reload as a demo. But if my soldiers are now in and everyone's healthy, then I, as a demo, could communicate like, okay, I'm reloading, like getting on this heavy in 2. So that not only gives a target for my bombs, but also a time for them to go. Likewise, my soldiers could be calling a commit timing, and then I, as the demo, could be either telling them not to because I don't have anything loaded and they're going too early, or agreeing and then going along with it. Things like this, dialogue, just general communication. But during a commit stage of an Uber push, communicating the time to go so that you're all actually going at the same time instead of just feeding one by one, and also targets so your damage is pinpointed into where it matters most and actually able to convert into kills that will long term win you a fight. That's as far as comms go. And let's talk about Uber margins, because they do matter a lot for last pushes and how you take them. First and foremost, like the obvious stuff out of the way, more ad is better. You have more time to use your Uber before they get. Less ad is worse because you don't have as much time to do what you need to do before their medic gets Uber. So I'm not just going to leave it at that. How does that actually like physically materialize? Well, first and foremost, no matter what the Uber margins are, you don't start out in the doorway ready to use. You start out on the point before it. And in some cases as well, let's imagine very straightforward situation of your team has ad and you decide to play a flip-flop into mid. So you bomb through cheese or whatever, and you catch their medic. You kill their medic. You kill however other people, doesn't matter. Let's say you only kill their medic in this situation, and everyone on your team stays alive. So you just cap the point, and their medic is still dead, so it's going to be a free second point. So you try and push the second point, and now you have ad for last. About 40 ad because you killed their medic with an Uber. So your medic was building during the respawn time for the other medic. But their medic is alive. You don't have Uber yet. You're at 40%. So you don't have anything to push off of quite yet. But you're going to push because you have that 40 ad, right? In a case like this, you should be entering lobby before you get Uber, right? Reason being, if you enter lobby as you're at about 80% is the rule of thumb for the most part. If you enter lobby at 80%, you are entering lobby as the other team is at 40%. In lobby, you can get your players buffed. You can get everyone ready to go. And it is, as a side note, important for your soldiers to maintain crit heals in situations like this, because that's the difference between them being able to get buffed to a full buff or not. So you get people buffed, and you build the remaining 20% off these buffs, off these heals. If you need to do a little bit of actual building with the basher or their demo shooting themselves or what have you, then so be it. But point being, you've taken that lobby space as you're at 80%, gotten everyone ready to go so that you are ready to use through that doorway as you're getting Uber. So in a situation like that, you enter at 80%, you're using as you're getting, or thereabouts. You're using about when their medic is at 60%, right? Because in this case I was talking about, it's 40 ad. Now let's imagine, same situation, same ad, but you wait until you're at 90 or even having to enter. So even if you just forego buffs and maybe just arrow a soldier here and there, so instead of staying in here for 20%, you're only staying in here for about 10%, then you are in a situation in which when you're using through, you would be effectively like 110%, right? But it doesn't go back to 100, of course. I hope the numbers aren't getting confusing. But what was the opponents being 60% when you were using in is now them at 70% because you waited until you got Uber to enter lobby. And even though you were faster in lobby than you would have been if you entered at 80, your soldiers are less buffed or not buffed at all, and you went faster through lobby. The mere fact that you entered so late meant that they are now 10% closer to getting Uber than if you had just entered early. This applies to any Uber margin, whether it's slim, whether it's a ton. You should be entering lobby before you get the Uber at about 80% so that you can adequately buff up those players. That is quite important. Now, of course, the more ad you have, the more time you have to buff everyone. And you just don't have to worry about their med getting during a post-Uber fight on last. If it's slim ad, then you might just need to focus their medic straight up. And if you don't get the med, then just know they're going to be getting Uber. And you can treat it Similarly to, I know I recently released a pressure video. You can just treat that as a disad situation in which you just have a ton of space for really deep pressure, maybe for a sack, something like that. Because that's effectively what that situation turns into if you don't get their med when it's slim ad. If it's really slim ad, where you don't even want to take the Uber because you know they're pretty much going to be getting immediately, then you can try to get through the door just to take space and then just treat it as a sack and intend not to use at all, which I kind of talked about in the start, and I didn't think I would actually talk about here, but yeah. So slim ad, of course, sucks more. You can't really get away with buffing people as much, but it's better than nothing a lot of the time. And as long as you're entering lobby early, then it's still playable in many situations, even like 30 ad. Okay. Another really important thing that you can do while entering lobby in that, you know, staging an Uber sort of factor, or even in this situation in which you were on at 40%, their med is spawning, is spotting. So even while you're building this Uber, you can totally be spotting. Not your combo. The spotting classes are going to be soldiers and scouts. And spotting has a lot of benefits, a lot of purposes. First and foremost, you want to just know what the hold looks like, which I'm going to talk about door selection sometime later. But what door you pick is going to be pretty much entirely influenced by where their combo is at, where their sentry gun is at, just what the hold looks like. So knowing what the hold looks like is a big deal. It's not uncommon for even good teams to just kind of choose a door they like using through. They use in, and then suddenly there's just like a pyro on that door. The combo's nowhere to be seen, and the Uber is just not good. And they had no reason not to spot. Like, they had the time to spot, and just spotting before deciding where to use would have potentially, you know, made the difference and turned that into a round instead. So identifying what the hold looks like is very important. That includes whether they have a sniper a lot or not, and a lot of the time the sniper is kind of the anti-spotting class, which is why demos and medics don't really want to be spotting last. Identifying, you know, if there's a sniper, what type of off classes they have and where. Pyro is a big deal here because, of course, Pyro can play gun Pyro, but Pyro can also play to stuff a doorway. Not so much on a last like Sultry, but especially like a Gullywash, for instance, or a Metalworks even. Pyro can be very potent for just stuffing an entire Uber in a doorway, and knowing where a Pyro is positioned might incentivize you to just use through an opposite door in order to just kill them, essentially. Turn that Pyro, instead of the Uber defeater, into just a free pick. As well as where their combo's holding, just so you know, if their combo's in some weird place, then you would probably want to use into that, kill them all. So spotting's very important, and of course, if you have more ad, you get to spot more. And yeah, spotting's quite important. Also, spamming down the gun. You can potentially spam down the gun before the Uber even goes off, and that's one less thing for your demo to worry about. If the gun goes down, it's all but guaranteed that your combo can cross, assuming they don't have like a pyro stuffing it or something like that. So being able to spam down a gun early with your soldiers spotting is really, really good. Won't happen all the time. Won't happen even most of the time. But the times that it can happen just really increases your chances of winning. So as long as you're not just like dying to a sniper for the gun, then yeah, spamming it down could be very good during your spot. Okay, let us talk now about door selection. So, what door you use through does matter. Kind of a lot, kind of a little bit. I mean, the stages are still the same. You still want to end on a side or cross. Well, end on a side regardless of whether you're cross or not. And Sultry is a decent example of this, I suppose. So typically you use through a side. I was using top left or top right as an example of just using in, because most lasts you have a side you use in on. And actually, top right is not really that great a door on Sultry to use through. It's mostly dungeon. But for most lasts, like think, you know, a snake water through shutter, a sunshine through top right, what other examples come to mind? Gullywash through shutter. Things like this you're usually using through on a side, so it's very clear whether you're crossing or staying. And you often want to use through the side that either their combo is positioned on or their gun is positioned on, like things I talked about earlier. There are some like minor exceptions, like a process, where you want to use it on the side the gun is on first, and then bomb into the combo. Things like that. But left side also serves as a bit of a dry door, where you might want to take some space before using, because you can feasibly get through the door a little bit. Of course, they could have a sniper, so you probably want to use on this ramp, but you get some space before using, which is quite nice. And then a good default door on Sultry is dungeon, because you can go to either side, so your demo can either already know where their combo is at, where their gun is at, things like that, and bomb to that side, or in the moment see which side they want to bomb on. Snakewater also has a lower that serves the same purpose, and kind of sunshine as well. So yeah, just identifying where their combo is at, and what the hold looks like is important. You obviously don't want to just choose a door that a pyro is holding, unless you want to convert that into like a double scout just to kill the pyro and have your demo trail to take out the gun or something like that, which is totally doable. But most of the time you just want to kind of avoid that pyro. Man, I had, in my original draft of this video, I think I had so much more insight on door selection. I'm not sure. There are like fast transition doors that you want to use on like Slimad, like Process 1 or something to that effect. But for like a standard setup Uber, where the other team has some type of setup, then there are, yeah, it's mostly just identifying, you know, if there's a pyro, use somewhere else. But yeah, it's just a matter of spotting to help you select your door. Okay, I guess I'll just move on. So off classes, how to deal with them is quite important. I've already explained how to deal with the demo, how to deal with the engineer as demo, and how to deal with gun pyro. I've talked about pyro a bit in general. How to deal with it, and it really is just scouts shooting the pyro, but also spotting kind of counters pyro holding the door, and also somewhat counters gun pyro, because like you know that it's coming, so you can, you know, prepare for it. So off classes, pyro is kind of dealt with. Heavy is important to deal with, and mostly heavy comes down to focusing them down in the commit. There might be a heavy before the gun goes down, like in a spawn, and that's just a matter of your demo, you know, threatening them with enough sticks that they actually have to stay in spawn. It can be annoying when a heavy's just in a spawn. Less so on Sultry, but if a heavy's just in the spawn shutter trying to spam you, you basically just trap that out and force them back, and they should go do something else. But it really comes down to focusing that pick in the commit. Heavy's a big thing to focus in a commit. Basically, unless there's like some obvious pick somewhere, I will always be shooting at the heavy, because that's the class that needs to die. So in those post-Uber commits, I very much like to focus down that heavy, and focus fire is really the thing that does it. Sniper, against a sniper, there really is like straightforward counterplay, which is just pop early. In the example of like top right, which again is not a great door to use, you would be popping like here, or even like here, before you cross into the sight line. Sniper on last, really, a sniper defensively on last really only serves to catch a pick on an unflashed player, because the other team didn't use early enough. Just use before you peek the sniper, and it's not an issue. That's simple as that. That's pretty much all the off classes you see defending last. So what next? My last notes were really just timing. Timing is really the #1 thing that affects if a last push is successful or a failure. Of course, there's a lot of moving parts. You know, a gun could get tanked and stay up a little bit longer. Maybe a scout really chased a soldier, got the pick, but is now a little bit out of position. A lot of things can happen, and you have to be malleable and flexible as a team. But by and large, if you play together enough and work out the creases to where you all get on a similar timing, then that's going to be the number one thing for success. Especially if there was nothing else to take away from this video, all the specifics, all the stupid, this is how you deal with a gun pyro. Oh, it's like one lock, one sticky to take out a gun. Ignoring all the like in-depth stuff, if there was anything to take away from this video to make your Ubers into last more successful, it was pick a side to end on and end on the side. Don't end in no man's land. Don't end in the middle of nowhere, half committed, half not. Either stay on the side you're at or fully cross to the other side. Those are like your two options for a successful Uber. That is what you want to do. And take the time to actually reload and reheal before your commit. If you don't find your commits are very successful, maybe it's because your demo is half HP and doesn't have any ammo loaded. Maybe it's because your soldier or your flank got shoved, managed to like get the pick or trade out the pick, but now they're a little bit weak. Just take the time to actually heal up and make the commit good. Yeah. And actually, I do want to go into a couple specific map examples here because I've been talking about how every last plays out a little bit differently. I was on Sultry because people talk about this being like a very difficult last to push, so I just kind of wanted to have the visual representation of this last for all the stages and important things I was talking about. But let's talk about some specific examples, because different maps have different quirks to them, including the lasts. We're going to Gullywash here because Gullywash breaks convention in one main way here, as far as the stages are concerned, and that's that you pretty much always want to end on the right side from the attacker's perspective. Basically every Uber I take, I aim to end on the right side because it's just better positioning than the left. You have more space, and yeah, it's very simple. So door selection on Gully doesn't super not matter necessarily. Shutter makes for a good default. Launchpad can be quite nice as well. It can actually counter a pyro shutter as well. River is totally adequate. And River might be preferred if they have a gun left side that you want to get as you're walking up to right. But for any door you use through, you want to be ending top right with your demo locking down shutter and establish this positioning. So make sure you're safe to a soldier bomb wherever. What this does is it forces their team to rotate left side. And if you can't tell, this is maybe the worst place that you want to be standing. It is high ground, I suppose. It's better than like this, but this is such a tight corridor that you can kind of just immediately transition into a commit because your soldiers can just bomb into the last, already bombing out of the targets here, and they can all just get nuked and die. And if a demo's water, it doesn't even matter because everyone's dead. Now you just kill him. But yeah, ending top right. Pretty much every Uber you want to end top right, and Gullywash is a big example that the demos that I demo review, and even I've seen very good demos in Invite mess this up, where instead of just holding down the right shutter, making sure you hold top right, getting your ammo loaded, and then just nuking them on the left side, they will drop down and immediately try and start fighting point, giving up right shutter, giving up left shutter, and letting them actually establish positioning, letting them walk out and now shoot at the low ground demo. Basically every Uber I just prefer to end top right on Gullywash. It just is very good. You need a very, very, very good reason not to. And yeah, that's what makes Gullywash a little unique. Of course, there are other quirks, like the cap time can come from water. You can get players behind, things to that effect. It's a point that if their demo traps the inside of the ring, you can't just clear it with a rocket. So again, illustrative of different quirks of different maps. But the main thing I wanted to touch on for Gullywash is top right is like pretty much where you always want to end. Very rarely do I like to cross. Basically never I like to cross on Gullywash. Next, let's go into process, because this breaks convention a little bit as far as what side you use in on. Typically, you just use in on the combo wherever they are, because you do want to catch players. And typically, the combo and the gun are on the same side, which I think is actually kind of a failure of a lot of holds. People really should put the gun on the opposite side so that people actually have to make this decision to either take out the gun or take out the combo. As far as door selection and process goes, 5 is basically the space door. 1 is kind of the fast transition door when they're not going to be fully set up and maybe caught to aggression in heaven. 2 kind of sucks. Like, you can take a successful Uber through 2, but it's not going to be successful because of Uber. 3 and 4 are the main doorways for when things are, like, settled down and everyone's alive and in position. And which door you choose just depends on if there's a sentry gun or not. If there's a sentry gun, then you use it in the side it's in on, which most of the time is going to be through 4. You can just take out the sentry gun, and usually you have enough Uber to bomb the opposite side and cross. And then if there's no gun, then of course you can just use into whatever side their combo is on, and most of the time that's going to be 3. It's a demo, you can bomb 3. Yeah, very brief here on process, just quick little explainer for the door selection, because it is a little bit different than some of the other maps where you just prefer to use in on wherever their combo is. Are there any other maps? Metalworks is a weird last as far as a cross goes, which I don't know if I have like super figured out yet. So I don't know if I want to talk too briefly about it. But you totally can cross on Metalworks. It's just weird because you're kind of doing it behind the point, like in front of their spawn. You really, really, really need to make sure you have enough Uber to do so. So if there's a pyro stuffing you at all, or even getting juggled by a soldier holding like the left door, assuming this is like a left side Uber, then you might have your Uber ending in front of their spawn, which is very bad, rather than ending like by bridge. Or I suppose you could cross in front of the point, not over the point necessarily, but I don't know. I'm kind of just waffling about at this point. I think things have winded down. I'm trying to think any other lasts that have quirks I want to talk about that break the conventions I've kind of established here. Honestly, not really. Yeah. So again, to reiterate, if there's anything to take away from this, it is incorporate the actual like slowdown period where you reload and reheal. That's very important. A lot of teams just straight up don't do that at all, and that really, really increases your odds of winning the last push, because the last push is won the majority of the time with the commit, not with the Uber itself. So keep those stages in mind and actually pace things correctly. And then again, your post-Uber positioning is really important. You want to end on a side. You don't want to end in the middle of nowhere. You don't want to end where you're letting players out of both spawns rather than only one. And you don't want to end where you can just get shot from all sorts of positions because you're on low ground and things are going poorly for you. So a good post-Uber positioning and a good pacing, taking the time to reheal and reload is really the most important things. That's probably like the main thing that teams should improve on that have trouble pushing last. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the topic. Hopefully this was useful. Of course, this is something many people struggle with at all sorts of levels. Even invite teams just seem to always want to be doing everything all the time with their Uber. And sometimes, you know, taking things at a better pace is going to be more successful. So yeah, hopefully that was enjoyable. Hopefully it was informative, and I'll see you guys next time.